Okay, so I'll introduce myself first. I am Melissa Ortiz, the CEO of Activate Human Capital Group. I think this is such an exciting opportunity to talk with Diane Majors, who's been a mentor to me and a wonderful friend for, I don't know, 15 years, Diane? A really long time. Anyway, we won't go there.
Going on
but
that. Let's go on that.
breezing right over that. We're doing a series of webinars to really highlight the recent Employee Engagement Award we received as being one of the top 10 engagement vendors in the nation, and just trying to get some better conversations started out in the kind of out in the business community. So let's see, Diane, do you want to?
Yeah. Welcome. I want to welcome everybody to this topic because I think as I introduce myself, I kind of represent the customer experience side of it. And so Melissa and I have been having a lot of conversations around how those two things play together and the conversations that we've been having. So I come from a background of working in and with organizations as well, like Cisco Foods and AT&T, helping them to build both customer and employee experience. And one of the reasons we have been together so long is that Melissa and I worked together at Cisco Foods to really bring this activation of the employees, giving them the ownership and empowerment. And so part of what we want to talk about today is a little bit of, what does it look like? And what are the things that you can do? Actually, what's the how behind really building out and understanding how your employees contribute to the organization and how they can pull themselves up by the bootstraps, right? Melissa, we're going to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, great.
So Melissa, guide us a little bit as to what our conversation is going to look like today.
Sure. I think it's such an appropriate time to be talking about this marriage between customer engagement and employee engagement. And the conversation started very quietly through the Gallup organization when I was there in, 2009. I think they really started with their Human Sigma book and talking and looking at the data around employee and customer engagement. And as we really continued on in this work, what we found is that the single best predictor of a customer's engagement level is their perception of the talent of the employee that they're working with. So is the employee that's serving me as a customer, are they a fit for their role? Are they excited about their job? Are they interested in the products and services that they're sharing with me? And really, that's what it's all about. And so how do we create that environment for the employee where we know they're in the right role, where we help them be enthusiastic about their work and the products and services that they're offering, and bring all that together, even when they're serving internal customers, right? So the conversation today is both at a high level about that customer and employee experience, but really personally, how do we own our own engagement? Because that's something I'm really passionate about. There's this kind of combination of a top-down and bottom-up approach that we have things we can do personally. Our managers have things they can do for and with us, and the leadership of our organizations has things they can do at a strategic level. So that's really what we're here to talk about today. And really continually circling back to customers. We encourage every employee to consider their internal and external customers along their path to success at work, because that's the surest path to organic growth for our organizations. Absolutely. And really thriving for ourselves.
Absolutely. So let's dig into that. So let's get some conversation started around where really we need to focus. You started with those 4 topics, and this one is really a huge importance, I think, just from saying, what you're doing every day and what you love to do, how does that fit within a role of an organization? And how do you grow? And how do you really understand if you're in the human capital or you're an employee, what do you understand and how do you understand that fit? Talk to us a little bit about that, Melissa.
Can we just start? I love this image. I think it's so fitting for when you interact with an employee. You're like, golly, that person's in the wrong role. You have a waiter at a restaurant who doesn't engage, who just takes care of business, but doesn't help you develop that into an experience of dining. It's more of a transaction. And so that's one of the things I'm most passionate about, because when we think about the path to employee engagement, it's all about getting the right butts in the right seats on the right bus. And one of the best tools I've found since I left Gallup, which, is $1 million price tag to get started. So if you don't have that, which I highly recommend if you do, I found the predictive index, right? seems like fewer and fewer of us have willing to just write a check and trust. So what I'm finding is that clients that are dipping their toe in and really jumping on board with a predictive index seems to be a great tool for building a common language. It's a behavioral profile and a talent selection profile platform that go along really nicely together. And what it's doing is helping my clients get really clear, crystal clear on what they want in a role. So if we go back to that server at a restaurant, what type of experience are we trying to create? And can I draw people in like a magnet that have that natural talent to thrive in that role, be really successful, earn tons of money and tips, and oh, by the way, carry the brand where we want it to go? So delivering at that level of excellence. Then we go find those internal and external candidates that naturally do those things. And the thing I like about Predictive Index, that it helps us continue on that path to success after we've gotten the person in the door. It's got a common profile, super intuitive, tactical tools that tell us what to do. Diane, you and I have had this conversation for years about our clients just say, tell me what to do. I'll do it. I don't know where to start. And I don't need these esoteric theories. I just need some tactical 3 steps to go get started.
Right.
Is that still what you're seeing in the marketplace?
You got it. Yeah, absolutely. It's like we want to shift the culture to be more agile, innovative, or creative. What are those things I need to do to get there? That's called everything. So boiling that ocean literally is what they're facing. But
Right.
It does come down to this human element, right? You shared a little bit about how you have an example of a client who's really able to distill that information and that understanding. Talk to us a little bit about Belay.
So Belay is such a fun client. They're a business that's all about enabling executives to be more effective. They've got a stable of superstar virtual assistants. They've been using a predictive index to get really clear on what their ideal candidate looks like from a talent perspective. And then they use these customized interview tools that PI generates to uncover both the fit to role and that cultural element. And this is a group of folks that I will tell you resonates on a very high energy frequency. They all operate virtually, so there is no home office. They're all just on fire all over the place, getting a lot of things done for their internal and external clients. And so they're looking for a natural fit and a resonance that fits within their culture and that role.
Yeah.
Which really
that's
then
great.
becomes
That's beautiful.
brand
So when
experience,
we
right?
get to that, then ideal fit to role and yes, exactly. Because it's the fit to role. You just feel like those puzzle pieces go together well. And I think that's where really brands hit their stride. What's the problem in this space then? So if we feel like, hey, we can get to that point, what are some of the obstacles that we see to really getting over this hurdle of understanding that fit to role?
Yeah. Both turnover and burnout can indicate an engagement or a fit to role issue, right? Those are the 2 we hear a lot about, both from our friends, from our peers, from our clients. I'm exhausted, I'm burnt out, I'm frazzled. We really are looking at organizations' efforts to improve employee experience. And if those efforts haven't been refreshed in a decade, there's a lot of likely small tweaks we can make to deliver some really solid results. The things I look for other than kind of that burnout or turnover is productivity dips, recurring safety absenteeism concerns, even customer churn. I'm also working with a client, a medical group, that they have a really onerous application process. And we're really looking at, does it have to be quite so bulky on the front end to even see if they're interested in working with us? There's nothing out there about them in the marketplace from an employment branding's perspective. And so we're looking at kind of the front end of engaging people on the way in as much as we're looking at it over the time that they're employees. So I'm really looking for words like...
That's great. So when you think about...
Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Okay. I was just going to say, the other thing when I hear a lot of the other words that there's so much buzz around, that languishing blah, I feel burnout. We see a lot of this in our employee engagement, open-ended feedback. I'm exhausted, frazzled, frustrated. 2 specific questions really come to mind in those instances. So one is, do they just need a little clarity on how to prioritize tasks? and then a little coaching on how to aim their unique talents at their job? Or are these employees simply not in the right role? And in which case we consider, I have a client who calls it repotting our employees so that they can thrive, right? So if we want to bloom where we're planted, sometimes we need to be repotted into a different role. And so I just love that analogy, especially with my agriculture background. It fits well within my lexicon.
I love that. I think it's part of that process of how we get to the point of really understanding it, how we make changes, and then what do we measure, right, against part of that. So that was part of what we talked about, which is having a process and a roadmap to that engagement. So what have you seen organizations do that helps our audience understand, okay, I get that. All those things make wonderful sense. Where do I start? What's the first thing I do?
Sure. So I typically advise clients to start with an engagement pulse, because it's A, the most common method. B, it gives us a super clear roadmap with confidential team level feedback that's relevant and recent. It's helpful to have a scientifically validated short set of items that can give us that baseline to create the clear roadmap of success. And I can't emphasize those criteria enough. Really, confidentiality, we have to feel confident that we can offer real, candid feedback, that there won't be repercussions or anybody getting access to our responses. Great questions read hard, really hard to answer well. We don't want soft pitches very often. And we need a short survey that can get to conversation starters, even if it doesn't solve the whole problem yet. Because otherwise we run into what we call survey fatigue. I'm over this survey. You've seen it from car dealerships, and there's so many surveys. They want to take 25 minutes of your time. Well, you're not going to get that. You might get 4, you might get 6, but not a whole lot more than that. So from there, really the team or individual teams can offer clarity on insight on what those hot spots are and why they need attention. And that's why we start with a short set of questions that can diagnose dang near every organizational issue if we start the conversation.
Well, I love that. It is a conversation. And what we see with a lot of surveys is they're very brand centric. They're asking about the things that they want to know about, but they're not really helping the customer talk to you or have that conversation around, let's kind of figure out what's going on. There's things customers and employees want to tell you. You're not giving them a platform to do that. I have a question for you on the question. We think about that really being, how do you ask a more beautiful question? So can you give us an example of what's a really good question? Give us an example of that really stops and makes them think.
Yeah, I know I'm doing well when my clients say, ooh, could we modify that question to make it a little easier? Some of the ones we run into that are really difficult questions, which we use a 1 to 5 scale, 5 being strongly agree and 1 being strongly disagree. One of the ones we run into, particularly around kind of reaching that pinnacle of engagement that is a 5, is work literally feels different to the people who offer a 5 on a survey versus a 4. So for example, one of them is, my talents are perfectly aligned with my role. And that word perfect is no low hurdle. It's really the difference between surviving and that pinnacle of thriving. When I'm thriving in my role because I am perfectly potted in the right seat, on the right bus, I have a lot more I can offer the organization. And oh, by the way, more energy to bring home for myself, my family, my community, my faith, my physical well-being. So that's a really important hurdle. Another really strong item is, I am an expert in my role. And expertise is another one of those nuanced ones. It's a high hurdle, but it's one our customers, both internal and external customers, expect us to be clear on a regular basis, right? They want to pay as customers to do business with experts. If we don't have confidence in our own expertise within our role, within our tasks, how can our customers have confidence? Similarly, our internal customers expect to call us and get what they need, whether it's from human resources or, our operations folks. They expect internal expertise. And so while we often will say, we're a learning organization, we'll never be experts. We're engineers or we're teachers, we'll never be experts. But by God, your customers expect you to be. So it's important for us as managers and team members to define what today's level of expertise looks like, go get it, and then go to the next level over and over again in our careers.
So I love that you've talked about take a step back and look at that and really understand what you have, the roles that you have and who you have. You're developing then how they really begin to understand where they fit and what their fit to role is. And then you're talking about how do you start to optimize that. So that sounds like a really good roadmap. Is that really
Yeah.
a great approach? And how data driven then is that roadmap? Because you
Yeah.
talked about a lot of different things.
Yeah.
Help
So
us understand that.
the roadmap is all the items we ask on our survey are compared to database norms. So we'll get a feel for how do we compare on this team to the database. Some of the database questions are harder to answer with a 5 than others. And so you'll get a really good feel for where are my strong relative items, where are the ones I need some help. And we can kind of teach you how to read that, kind of like we read the tea leaves. But on each individual team level scorecard, you'll get 2 specific recommendations on what to go do, what to ask about. So you don't have to know how to craft a more beautiful question as a manager. We give you the tips and the starting points. Okay, go ask this. Here are some issues that might be at play. Ask these questions to get that conversation started. And if what we find in our database is managers who go through the action planning process, who share the data with their teams, they see huge levels of improvement in engagement, even when we know these managers are not the most sophisticated facilitators in the world, but they're doing the work of engagement, and that's the follow through. Because if they're not going to do the follow through, we encourage them to save their money and throw a party. Because you're really better off to just from a morale perspective to throw a party than you are to do an engagement survey and never let anyone hear back on what the data was that was collected.
It's exactly right. It's what I call beyond the bagels, right? That everybody's giving these tips and these nice things, bagels on Friday, which is all great, but it doesn't really solve the opportunity of really where you're headed. So throwing a party can only get you so far. So
beyond the bagels. I have a lot of clients.
So let's talk beyond the bagels.
Beyond the bagels. I have a lot of clients who are talking about re-onboarding as people return to the office. They're talking about kind of re-onboarding their teams. And I think it's an interesting time to think about, beyond, like some of them are doing, these camps, they're returning to camp and they're doing this fanfare and funfair around it. But are we getting crystal clear again on the expectations, making sure everybody still has the resources they need and that they're in the right role today? Those are the better onboarding things we could be doing for our teams.
Well, tell me then, all of those things, that's another part of the change, right, is coming back to work. But tell me how this space has really changed. We think about human resources and human capital and employee experience. Talk about like 10 years ago, what has happened in this industry?
It's so fascinating to watch. I think the HR space has seen more change as an industry, as a group, as a broader department than just about anything else out there. Because HR in the past, we know, right, was comp and benefits. We get people paid, we get their benefits right, and hopefully we don't screw up. And it's all about risk mitigation.
Yep.
It was very transactional, and mostly it still is. But what's happened in the last 10 to 15 years that I've been in this space is really that leaders across the organization started noticing that they were leaving a lot of value on the table. They were paying the vast majority of their profitability into people, right? 70%, 80% of their costs were people, our people. And the competition's tightening up. The labor market is tight. The marketplace for competition for great talent is, we all have to get smarter, right? And so this is where human capital leaders really emerged from. Often I saw them as sales or operations people that got into HR because they saw that the human element needed a lot of work. And so those are certainly my favorite clients to work with, the ones that really get that, yeah, we got to cover our bases in terms of comp and benefits and safety. But what we're here to do is elevate people to the right roles where they can thrive and deliver more value for the organization.
Yeah. So what's the difference between organizations that do this well and those that don't? What do you see?
It's kind of dual, right? It's the feel of being there. It's kind of a charged environment. When your leaders are human capital leaders and they're embracing the concept of better work equals a better world, they intuitively and financially understand the benefits of employee health and well-being. The fact that morale directly affects our customers, our profitability, and our safety. So it's both the feels and it's the results, because they're getting drastically better results in the marketplace, in their financial P&Ls, than their competitors who are spending all their time filling and refilling roles, who are dealing with employee harassment issues, who are dealing with everything but growing the business. And so that becomes a huge distraction. So there's just been this divergence in HR with people, you know, we've got our comp and benefits people who are still critically important keeping the wheels on the bus, but they're not the ones setting the tone, defining the vision, and really creating great employee experiences. So I would have a question back for you, Diane. How do these elements?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No.
Okay. So my question for you really is about how do these elements show up in your work, Diane? How do employee experience and customer experience kind of interact and cascade? And how does the employee and customer experience, where does it live within the organization today from what you're seeing?
Well, what I love about the question is I always ask people to think about an experience that they've had with an organization or brand, because invariably you can tell when somebody has that expertise, when they are really passionate about what they're doing, that they're not just reading off a script, that they truly care about who you are and helping you achieve your goals and add value. So what happens is when we know that the customers show up and the employees show up in different ways, and there's a very clear relationship between the understanding of the value that's getting created on both ends, that's where we see companies shine. So I love some of the companies like Southwest and HR and a Starbucks who have really have been for years saying our people are what it's all about. And if we keep them engaged and happy and challenged and fulfilling the right role in the organization and moving them up, and valuing them, listening to them, using their ideas, all of those things create employees who want to come to work, who are passionate. That just exudes. And so that spills over into how they design for customers, because they feel like they've got that sense of purpose. And so they spend more time understanding customers, they care for them, they go to fix problems. It's great when you think about the brands that we all know and love. That's all they've done for years. Ritz-Carlton, Disney, that's where they really shine. And so modeling some of that behavior and understanding how they got there is part of where we see those companies who have great employee experience, have great customer experience. And both of those things increase revenue, reduce churn and turnover, some of the things that you talked about. So they're intimately linked.
Yeah. So how do you see that?
Let's turn that back to say a little bit about how those decisions get made in an organization.
Yes. Yeah, that was what I was going to ask you about. Is you talked a little bit about listening to employees and using their ideas. Are you seeing that design and decision-making activities are happening closer to where the action is today than maybe they were a decade ago?
Oh my gosh, we get so many calls for people who are looking for, they have all this information and they want to be innovative and collaborative, and they just don't have the tools and the information and the way to engage people. They say that's what we want, but we're not quite sure how to take that along. So what we're seeing is a lot of skill building and understanding and bringing in employee feedback. And gosh, one of my favorite things is to bring the front line into the design sessions where we're talking about new products or apps or digital, because they have all this wealth of knowledge about what customers and other employees are looking for. And so their ideas become part of what it really energizes and brings that creativity and curiosity to some of those. So we see many more people being engaged in that. It makes for a much more well-rounded resolution to the opportunity you're looking at too, because with so many people coming at it from different perspectives, with that enthusiasm, you get a much more holistic design from front to end, top to bottom, of what needs to happen to deliver on that experience. And that's where we're seeing organizations really take off, when they're able to corral, harness that energy and the movement, provide the skill sets to their teams and move forward.
Yeah. Yeah, we have one attendee question that might be appropriate to answer now. It kind of is in the theme of how do we connect all these ideas. And so the question is, how does Activate communicate findings of this pulse survey to management and leaders in an organization? And so it's a really interesting process, because it's like I mentioned, it's this top down and bottom up, right? So top down, we're looking at organizational trends, department level trends. You know, I've got a lot of clients that have kind of traditional blue collar workforce that is in the machine shop. They're building things and they're working in hot, sweaty environments. And then they've also got white collar staff. They're working in nice air conditioned offices or now often from home. They might have different schedules. Some are working at night. And so we're often cutting the data differently to look at depending on the way the organization is structured. So we might find different nuggets. Sometimes we cut the data by tenure. So we're looking at bit broader trends of what consistently is coming across the organization or kind of groupings of hotspots. And then from the bottom up, we're also looking at team level scorecards. What can we do as individuals to own our engagement, as managers to be the stewards of our team engagement? But it's kind of a dual approach to come at it and get really good value. So I often create roadmaps for my clients that are, you know, a leadership level roadmap and a management level roadmap. So we've got different objectives and deliverables. Well, typically the same objectives, but different paths to getting there, depending on the level of support where you are in the organization. So thank you for that question.
Yeah, that was a great one. But I loved what you said. So we're going to move on to one of my favorite topics of how do you get people to really own their own engagement? We've all had those employees that, you know, for everything we offer to them, we give them opportunities to learn and they just kind of drag their feet. So what I want to know is how important is it when you're thinking about working with them, you know, what do we do to really motivate them? What's the challenges that are in our way?
Yeah, especially this is important as we are facing this work from home move, right? This is a transition that's happening for people who want to work from extended periods or forever for some of my clients from home. And one challenge I've always had with the traditional model of employee engagement and development is that it's so often this top-down approach. Here's what you need to learn. Here's what you need to do. Here's a training to go to. And here's your constructive criticism for the month. But not as much as I'd like to see is done to coach people on how do you ask for what you need? How do you even self-diagnose what am I frustrated about specifically? How does it tie to the engagement framework? And how do I ask for what I need in a productive and professional manner? And so we've combated some of that by putting tools in managers' hands and holding them accountable for developing the players on their teams. But to me, and into the future, it just simply won't be enough. We've got people hopping careers, and that's okay if they need to repot themselves. But before they hop, because often they're just trying to hop away from a bad manager, if we could give them the tools to sustain them and ask for what they need productively, we might stave off a lot of unnecessary turnover. So at the organizational and individual level, we just need to learn that skill. It's kind of like a muscle, right? We start to build that muscle. We start to lift weights. We start to practice. And suddenly it comes more naturally. It comes more naturally as our friends are venting to us to ask some questions about it. So it sounds like you're not really clear on what's expected of you. Yeah, actually, that is at the crux of my issue. So we need to get really good at that piece, I think.
I agree. I think the self-awareness, you know, Melissa knows that from the audience, my background is in psychology, and I think it's always helping people to really discover themselves, where they are, and kind of hold a mirror up to them and let them really reflect on what they're doing and what their needs are and what they need to be successful, because they might not know, and they might be just kind of stuck in a place where I don't really know how to speak for myself or ask for what I need. So that education around just being introspective, not even the behaviors yet, but just how can I really sit with that information? So Melissa, I'd love for you to walk through a little bit of an activity that's going to help exactly with that. Can you walk the audience through what we have here?
Sure. So this is kind of my approach to, if I was an attendee and I'm like, okay, how do I own my own engagement? Well, here's a set of items you can play yourself against. Just find yourself a quiet space, mute your phone and your watch and your email and all that stuff. Give yourself 10 minutes to just sit with these engagement items, read through them, and reflect and ask yourself the following question. Is there any need from this list that is not being met for me at this time? And you'll start to bubble up and go, I think you'll start to see that a couple of them resonate with you. And I'll tell you the foundational items are around expectations, resources, and talent alignment. If we get those three right, virtually all of the other engagement issues just dissipate. So really focus on those three, and then kind of make some marks around your personal hotspots that you can brainstorm alone or with a trusted colleague about ways you could personally address your engagement in these areas. And my role as always with friends, family, and children is no whining. Like, this isn't a whining session. This is a productive, what can I do to move myself forward? And so I'll send this out to attendees after the session, but this is just such a valuable quick tool. We can do it with our team members, certainly, but we can do it for ourselves in the guise of owning our own engagement.
I love that. I love it. It's just a great way to start that reflection and really think through who you are at work and how it plays into your moves forward. So let's think about how we master that brand. So that's some great stuff. Well, so far we've heard that business and the development of getting great human capital assets has changed a lot over the years. There's a lot. And the winners in this game are investing in their people. And we've talked about some skill sets and ways of understanding that I think will help that. I think the aligning roles to talent is huge, but it's also helping the individuals understand what they need and want, and what is that role that really matches who they are and where they're headed. And then there's also these helping the individuals really understand, reflect, and take ownership of that so that they can start to master their own brand. And it starts with understanding, building who you are, being definitive about what you want, finding a place where you can contribute. Whatever those things are, it's finding that right fit in that mold that fits you like a glove, or is your fingerprint, if you will, to where you're headed and what you want to do to impact an organization.
Yeah.
Is that the message you want us to absorb?
100%, completely. This work is so equally powerful, both for individuals and organizations, right? There are great tools out there through Activate Human Capital Group, and so many of our peers. And the one thing I probably haven't emphasized enough yet is the importance of just finding a partner to hold you accountable, a partner you like and trust to give you really candid feedback, not just what you want to hear. And so that's something our clients tell us repeatedly that we do so well, is that we really seek to understand our business, their clients, their people, and their leaders, because if we don't really understand those elements about our clients, we can't be in a position to challenge them and hold them accountable. So that doesn't benefit anyone. And another thing I'm pretty excited to think about as we think about performing better in the marketplace is removing some of the blinders we may have subconsciously been wearing, especially in the case of talent coming in the pipeline. So we've traditionally had, I need a 4-year university degree, I need 5 years experience in the area. But if I knew you were a natural fit, if I knew you were a diamond in the rough, like I can know through predictive index, it's so much easier for me to waive those, which then often opens up some of the diversity elements for us, because some of our diverse populations haven't had the same experiences that we have. And that opens up the pipeline. And so that's something I'm really excited about that we're able to do, and do in a really specific and meaningful way. And so that's really that mutual benefit is my why, kind of this better work, better world, and everyone benefits, is why I have been doing this work for so long.
Well, that's great. So how can people chat with us?
Well, let's see, you want to go, here we go. So there's so many ways to get started. I mean, I would say the most valuable are an engagement pulse. If you feel like you're in a place where you really need to reevaluate your employment brand, that's a great place to start in terms of looking at the predictive index. I have executives come to me often and say, I just need a better resume. I need something that highlights not just what I've done, but who I am at my core, so I can go kind of act as a magnet, and people don't read, right? So we're trying to get a lot more specific. I wish I had some beautiful, the $99 intro package and the $999 option and the $9,000 option, but we really try to meet our clients where they are. And so the best way to get started really is to just connect with me on LinkedIn. There's an option on our website that you can schedule time with me. It's just getting started. You'll know pretty quickly if we're a good fit for your organization or not, but that's really, a 15-minute conversation. We can get a whole long way towards helping me understand what are your aspirations and are we a good partner on that path.
Well, thank you for the conversation, Melissa. Your passion has not waned, even if it's been a long years that we've had. I still hear you talk about all the critical things that you do, and all you love to bring both companies and each individual in that company to that better work and better world. So thank you so much for today. Is there any parting comments you'd like to make to the audience?
Just really to you, Diane, I feel so grateful for this kind of continued conversation around this employee and customer experience, and that's something that you do so well and we do so well together, that I just love this opportunity to, get some tangible tools in people's hands. We'll email out to attendees that one pager afterwards, but just, don't be afraid to make a jump, to tell yourself it can be better. I was listening to a podcast the other day that was talking about how you have to do things you really love outside of work so you can bring that energy to work as it sucks your life away. No, that's not enough. We need to be better at work so we can have more energy for the rest of our lives. I think it's kind of the reverse. So thank you for the time and the opportunity, and I look forward to feedback. So we kind of ran out of time for questions. We answered one in the context of the session, but is there one more question maybe lingering out there that we should think about answering? See, we mentioned scorecards.
One more question about, you mentioned the scorecards.
Yeah, scorecards on a managerial level. Does Activate provide individual scorecards for the employees? Yeah. So because we want to protect confidentiality, we don't. We maintain a team of 4 or more gets their own scorecard, and each individual will receive a copy of their team level scorecard to give feedback on. But because we want to make sure that everyone's data is confidential and not exposed, we kind of maintain a small team mentality that will really help us work through that. So hopefully we get, a few conversations started in your workplace and your teams, kind of even in planting and seeds in your own head. So I hope everybody has a great rest of your day, and thanks for hosting, Diane.